Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how you start writing. Weirdly, this is one of the questions I get the most on YouTube in the comments when I do writer videos. And it hadn't occurred to me, like, I don't know why, because I was like, how do you finish? How do you get through the middle? How you like deal with tricky issues? But starting is probably the hardest part. So let's talk a little about like writing inspiration, how you can get yourself motivated, and how you find your story. So that's what I'm going to do today. Let's go. So every writer will tell you the same thing. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it just because I have to say it. It's required by law. There's like a writer's law and I signed it. So, and the writer's law is if you want to write, you got to read. And inspiration will often come from reading. So the first thing you do is read. But you know that already. That's why you're here. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a reader. So blah, I'm sorry I said that. But I had to. It's the law. So, okay, step one, decide what genre you want to write in. Are you writing a young adult novel? Are you writing crime? Are you writing thrillers? Are you writing, romance? What's your jam? That's the first key, I think, step more than anything. So choose your genre and then focus your reading on that genre. So read, when I was doing it, I would literally look at, it's really hard to find books that you're going to like, but I would look at the top 10 books in that genre. Or really the top 20, because maybe you want to be picky, because sometimes there's like free Amazon books and they may not be your thing or whatever, or maybe they are your thing, that's fine either way, but decide what your thing is. And read as many of those as you can afford, whether you're going to the library, buying the Waterstones, downloading them from Amazon, just find those books, because that's going to tell you what's selling, what agents are looking for, what publishers are looking for. And that makes the possibility of your book getting published much more likely if you understand the industry. So that's my big advice, is just know your genre. You would be amazed, amazed how many people I talk to who say, I'm going to write in this book. I don't read that stuff, but I've got this idea for a great crime novel. And I think, well, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. I'm sorry, you can't write without reading. So step one, read a ton. And you would be amazed what that will fire in your mind. Of people who are friends of mine who read my book, so many then decided they wanted to write a book themselves. And that, I think, is just not because, oh, my book is so great, but simply because they sat down to read something they wouldn't ordinarily read, and it inspired them. So that is also part of it. So, okay, step two, step out of your comfort zone. Read books that even your brain says, don't read that one. So I said earlier, if the free Amazon Kindle ebooks are not your thing, maybe read one if you wouldn't normally. When was the last time you read one? Try taking chances on what you read within the realm of what you want to write. So for me, serial killer books, I hate them, don't at me. I just don't enjoy them, but I read them now and then, just in case there's something going on in there that might inspire me. I'm never going to write a serial killer book, but there's good writing out there in serial killer land, and I can learn from that. I can cherry pick bits of innovation, cleverness, just those little things. Plotting is very tricky. I'm going to get to that next. So read everything. Read things that are outside your joy anyway, so at least you know what you don't want to do. If you still hate it, take some chances on that. So you've done your reading, you're set. Now, how do you really start? How do you start chapter one? It begins. It's hard. It's the hardest thing. The fear of the white page is real. It is something that everybody deals with. And here's advice that I read, and I cannot remember who told me this. I cannot remember where I read it. Maybe it was Stephen King, because I read, the only book on writing I've ever read is by Stephen King, that I really read for choice, that I wasn't in school reading, but one that I sat down and picked up and read all the way through was Stephen King's On Writing, which I highly recommend. Mostly because it's joyous. There's not a huge lot of, a massive amount of advice in there, but hidden in his own story, you'll find a lot of amazing guidance. And I think perhaps it was he who said, everything should start in the middle. So don't try to start at the beginning. It says chapter one, start in the middle of something. Your first line is the middle of a conversation, the middle of a fight, the middle of a chase, the middle of a killing. Everything, start in the middle, and you get rid of that fear of the beginning. Never start with someone waking up. Never start that way, because that's just a cliche. And don't try to start, like, there's all the best first lines thing. It drives me crazy. Because terrible books have good first lines. Writers spend a huge amount of time on it. That's their beginning, and I'm not interested in that. The first line of Night School is, you know, hurry up. Like, that worked for me. It's right in the middle of a crime being committed by teenagers. Like, that's the beginning. And what's the first line of the Echo Killing? Oh my God. Hold on. It was one of those nights. And it starts in the middle of a crime about to happen. So it's in the middle of somebody's working day, a crime's about to happen. In a way, that one does kind of have one of those first lines, so everything I say is a lie. But generally speaking, I mean it. Like, it's best if you can start in the middle of something exciting happening. And then you're on your way. It just goes faster if you do that. That's how your book's gonna start. How do you start? The very, 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 very beginning, so not very, very, the very, very, very beginning is reading. The second very, very beginning is deciding who your characters are, at least for me. So who do I want to write about? Do I want to write about a criminal? Do I want to write about a cop? Do I want to write about a mother of 5? Do I want to write about, you know, I don't know, a dog handler? Who's my character? I come up with my main character, and then I sketch out who's her best friend or his best friend, who is she in love with? Who is she likely to fall in love with? Has she ever been in love? Build these characters. Who are her parents? Who's her siblings? Does she have a best friend? And build and build. Who's her boss? And build and build. Each time you want to know their name, what they look like, how old they are, what does she do, where's her office? What's her office look like? What's her house look like? What's her car? What kind of car? These are all critical questions because each one betrays a choice the character made. So it matters. In the Echo Killing, Allie drives a used Camaro with 120,000 miles on it, which is in impeccable condition because she knows the mechanic and she works really closely with him and they're friends. So she gets favors. So that's how she can afford to maintain an old car and keep it running and make sure it goes fast. But it's old, so it was cheaper to buy, and that comes from her finances because journalists don't make a lot of money. So you can sort of see each decision tells something. She lives in a small apartment, but she lives in the historic district of Savannah. That's close to where everything happens, and for her that makes the most sense. And also she gets cheaper rent there, which is a bit of a fabrication because I'm not sure you can get cheaper rent there, but it worked for me, and the story worked with me. So you see what I mean? Like, every decision has to be explicable. What drives me crazy as a reader is the Friends thing. So in Friends, they all have really, you know, low income jobs, but they live in a magnificent apartment in the most expensive city of America. I mean, you know, and then they had to come up with, like, this became such a joke at the time, just so you know, I'm that old that I remember, because everybody's like, how can they afford this huge apartment, which would cost literally millions? They came up with this elaborate fabrication that it was an aunt who gave it to them, which, you know, blah. Anyway, see what I mean? Like, you've got to think about that when you're writing. They can't have that apartment. Their apartment has to be smaller, or the reason they have it has to make sense. So that's what you're looking for, is what kind of apartment, how big, how small. Is it clean? Are they clean freaks? Is it filthy? Is it just in between? Do they just let stuff clutter up, pile up? All of that gives you a picture of your character. And for me, that's step one. That's before plot. Because once I know my character, then I write my plot. Because now I know how they'll react, because I know them. And the process of just sketching out all of your characters, your main, with me, because I write ensemble books, there's always, say, 5 or 6 or 7 main characters that you see recurringly. So in the Echo Killing, it's Harper McLean, it's her best friend Bonnie, it's Miles the photographer, it's Baxter, her boss. Like, those are the 4 key. And then there's Luke, the love interest, and there's Robert Smith, the cop, who's more or less raised her from a child, like 6. And then there's Blazer, her nemesis, 7. And they reoccur. So I had to know all of them sort of back to front before I came up with the plot. And that is just me. Not everybody does that, but I have found, for me, every time I start a new book, that's what I do. I sketch this out. And once I do that, the plot is easier. So now let's talk about plotting. So you've sat down to plot, you've got your characters, you've done your reading, you know the genre, you've got an idea for what you want to write, just a general 1-paragraph idea. You know, a woman is killed late at night on a dark street in Philadelphia, and her body is found outside the mayor's office. Go. Like, that's your writing prompt, really. You got your prompt. So now you sit down and you sketch out how that first chapter is going to go. And maybe even the best thing to do is take your prompt, actually, take that prompt and expand it to one full page. So, you know, that's where the body's found. So this person is investigating it because they're a cop, and this person is helping them because they're a photojournalist and they were friends with the woman, and then you expand that out to one page. Once you've got one page, if you like it, then you expand it out to two and you start looking at the order things are going to happen in. So then you have an idea of, like, this probably is going to happen at the beginning, this will probably happen in the middle, towards the end this will happen, and this is how it will all wrap up. And you always need to know your end destination, know where you're going, because that will help everything else fly along. And even if you change your mind later, as you go along, just write your first, like, the first thing that comes to your mind about how it should end. The killer is the mayor's son who has had a mental breakdown due to using too much spice, and now he killed this woman because she was gonna blackmail him to his dad, who was gonna throw him out of Ivy League or something, right? Voila, there's your end. So then you begin writing towards that. And the more you know where you're going, you'll find that more plot comes to you. Oh, what about a best friend? What if he threatens her? What about, you know, what does her mother think of this? What about this? Is this person going to get tangled up in it? Wait, what if so-and-so works in the mayor's office? And you can gradually sort of thread together some complex twists and turns just from knowing where you wanted to start and where you want to end. Once you've got all of that, and I like to get to about 8 pages of synopsis, down to the point where I kind of know, like, it almost naturally forms chapter limits, or at least part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. Once I've got that, then I'm good to go. Then I'm ready to sit down and write, you know, the sound of running feet broke the silence of the Philadelphia night, and that's the beginning, and I'm off. And, you know, nobody heard her scream, and whoosh, you're in, I'm in. Start in the middle, plot everything you want to do, as just in general detail, even if it's just one line. Know your genre, know your characters like actual friends, like what their favorite music is, what her favorite, do they like pizza, do they hate pizza, are they gluten intolerant? These are things you should know, and they will tie in. Like, one thing when I was writing The Echo Killing, for example, in the first draft, she's always ordering cappuccinos, and it was my editor who said, this character would not drink a cappuccino. And she's absolutely right. She would drink her coffee black. So, like, look out for stuff like that. I had missed that, but I went through and changed cappuccino to black coffee in every instance, and it just helped form her. Not because, like, drinking black coffee is, like, this thing. It just plants seeds about character in a way that you wouldn't think. Also, the fact that the drink she goes to, initially when I was writing The Echo Killing, she pours herself a glass of white wine. And I remember the moment when it occurred to me that when I was her age, and, like, I'd never had white wine in my fridge ever. Like, I had a bottle of whiskey, Jameson's, because it was affordable and delicious, and maybe beer, like, because it was cheaper and just easier to get. And I didn't know wine. I didn't have time to know wine. So, and Jameson's was like one little drink and it's delicious. Like, don't drink it if you're underage. If you're overage, I highly recommend. So yeah, like, that formed her, giving her that drink, which I like still to this day to have now and then when it's cold. Giving that to her, that helped form her character, because it's a tough drink, right? Like, it's a man's drink, really. And I'm giving her that man's drink because I want you to know that she's tough, and she is. So yeah, these are little things you're looking for to know your character that will then help you see your plot and how they fit into it, because they have to be as much a part of it as you are part of your house, your home, your family. They have to fit into that plot. So all of that at the same time, it inspires you. It fires your imagination. And the story should, if it's real, if it's going to work, begin, just fall right into place. Hopefully at least the beginning. Hopefully at least that first chapter. So that would be my advice, like, as a writing, like, almost experiment to do, is to sit down and invent a main character. So I hope you'll all do that and see where it goes from there, because you never know. I want to read all your books when they're done. So out there, good luck, writers. I'm pulling for you. I'm with you. I believe in you. Keep going. Don't give up. You can do it. See you soon.